If you open many general football history books, you will see a particular genre of picture on the first page. Sometimes it is black and white, sometimes it has been colorized. If the writer is long-winded or the book is small, it might end up on the second or third page. If the book is old, it might even have been especially drawn or inked for that publication. The subject will always be the same: a football game in medieval England. When perusing the pictures, for there are many, you will notice the same elements. The players will not be in uniform. They will be in their normal everyday clothes. They will not be wearing any form of footballing equipment, for it is the Middle Ages. In the background, as a backdrop and form of context, the buildings will probably be half timbered, showing that the players are in the middle of a large town or city. There might even be a Christian spire to anchor the proceedings to ye old England. Sometimes the street will be cobbled or full of rubbish to show that we are not in modern times. Although the drawing is a static depiction, the artist will have been skillful enough to convey important information about the game that is being played. There will be a ball, although its position and size in relation to the overall picture will imply that it is not necessarily of critical importance to the scene as a whole. Of the players, the first thing we should observe is that there are many of them. The picture should show them almost bursting out of the frame. This will be another attempt at context, for you are to recognise that this is not a game of 11-a-side. The more perspicacious of you will now perceive that football was played by an indeterminate number of people, which could mean hundreds. The implication that I took in my younger years was that this was how football started. Sometimes non-players will be included in the scene. They might be crushed up against a wall trying to keep away from the mob bursting down their street. They might be expressing surprise and fear, or anger if they are merchants. This will be because their produce will be getting cast to the four winds by the players who are intent on following the ball. After a minute studying this interesting scene, the reasonable observer will deduce that our football was born from violence. Now that you have heard my opening analysis, please burn the next sentence into your memory forever. Mob football has nothing whatsoever to do with the world game that was invented by the Scots. When you understand that, you will realise why the history you think you know is a pack of lies. This can be difficult for many mortals. Most people are not historians. Most individuals are not skeptics. This gives us a myriad problems when looking at what seem to be facts. What could be a more obvious truth than a picture in a history book? When I ran the Scottish Football Museum, I would always say that we were looking for what wasn't there. Once I had established my credentials as a northern variant of the Delphic Oracle, I would explain what I meant. The more I studied the history of football in Scotland, the more I realised two things. One, a reasonable understanding of the development of the game did not exist, and two, we needed to go back and examine what we already thought we knew. I therefore turned my baleful eye on these images of imbecility. I tried my best to envisage a line of development which linked the scientific game with these outpourings of violent enthusiasm. I swiftly gave up this particular hunt as my colleagues in the museum started collecting quotes about football from that most unlikely of sources, the Kirk. They were the new, more serious and purer keepers of the true Christian tradition. One of the first things they saw was the danger that lay in any activity which might keep people away from God. After the Reformation in Scotland, there appeared a strain in society which seemed to be suspicious of any human activity which made people cheerful. Happiness seems to have been regarded as suspiciously papist, even though Catholicism had been socially exterminated in most parts of mainland Scotland. The guardians of the people's morals became the members of the Kirk Session, a finer and more boring selection of local society than might be available anywhere outside a convention of the dead. Football was considered by the Kirk Session as a, quote, superstitious and abominable custom played promiscuously by both men and women. I recall Billy Connolly describing Presbyterianism as the fear that somebody somewhere was enjoying themselves, and football certainly fitted that bill. This brings us to my so what question. There are hundreds of comments referring to football before it was allegedly invented by posh people. What does this tell us? It tells us that football was a regular pastime which got in the way of citizens going to church. It tells us that football was not a once-a-year chance to punch the guy down the street. It tells us that it was a planned-for and agreed-upon pastime. It was part of the DNA of Scottish society, and no reformation was going to kill the people's love of the game. So, erase from your mind any image which links violence to the leather sphere. Instead, replace it with a picture of a bright, clear Sunday morning. The roads leading to the kirk are empty. As you come closer, you can hear the sound of feet dancing swiftly over the grass and flattened gravestones of the churchyard. Leaning over the wall, you see the pride of Scotland's youth moving hither and thither, calling for and receiving the ball, dashing down the wing and smoothly passing to their friends, in a delightful demonstration of dexterity and intelligent strength. As your imagination takes flight beyond the confines of those innocent joy-bringers, you begin to understand that this scene was repeated across hundreds, even thousands of patches of grass in every town and village in Scotland across the centuries. The beautiful game was everywhere. Mob football was a cul-de-sac down which the Scottish game never ventured. That, my friends, is real history.